Chemistry or pharmaceutical chemistry questions shows up on the board exams, and most students find difficult to answer them. Here I like to present 3 easy tips that helps you to complete memorize medicinal chemistry. So let's begin. Here how to memorize complete medicinal chemistry in simple 3 tips. So the first one is by focusing on the analogs or also the active pharmacophore for each class of drug. And the second one is there are some drugs, they are active metabolites of other drugs. So identifying those active metabolite that functions, that works like a drug. And then third tip is by there are some active isomers, like some specific enantiomers or one specific type of isomer that is known to have a more activity, so therefore that will work as a one specific drug. So let's continue from first tip, that is analogs. Well, analogs or also there are pharmacophores. That means for some chemical class of drugs, there are some specific groups are essential for its activity. Means either the rings are essential for their pharmacological activity, or there are certain functional groups are essential. So those are referred as analogs and pharmacophores. So I like to begin with some examples of analogs and pharmacophores that are presented here in this presentation. So here begins with some important analogs that always comes up in the exams. So here, first one, I like to begin with antihistamines. Antihistamines, there are first generation antihistamines, second generation antihistamines, and also there are third generation antihistamines. But I like to begin here with one first generation antihistamine, that is ethanolamine, which is a highly tested point in the exams. So the ethanolamine types of antihistamines are, they all end with the suffix of that names end with the amines. So the amines like diphenhydramine or doxylamine. That means you see the suffixes here, those are amines. So basically those chemical analogs, they have amines in those structures. And so especially there's a huge exam tip here is about the first generation antihistamines, and they're known to have cause sedation side effect or sedation effect. So the question is, why first generation antihistamines cause sedation? So here you can guess your answer, and you can submit your answer in description below, and here I would also provide your answer right after a few seconds. But until then, you can guess why first generation antihistamines have a high sedation effect. So let's look at those. First generation antihistamine sedation cause because they do have a tertiary amine group, and those tertiary amine group can cross the blood-brain barrier. So that means the first generation antihistamines, they all have this tertiary amine group. So that means because of those tertiary amine group, these first generation antihistamines, especially ethanolamine type, they can cross the blood-brain barrier. So that means they do act on central nervous system, and also they act on the peripheral nervous system. So because they are also acting non-selectively on central nervous system and peripheral system, so therefore they are often associated with those severe sedation side effects. So that means that's not possible or less possible or not doesn't happen with the second generation antihistamine. So that's the key point that is often expected in the exam. So, or you can just remember first generation keyword is sedation. And also a little side note here. So easy way to memorize second generation antihistamines are their suffix end with a dine or zyme. So here's the dine and zyme. So the other side note here I like to add, so case question can be possible in the form of the case scenario. So here if you're counseling or there is a huge exam question in the exams, board exams especially about when you're counseling for antihistamines, especially when you're giving patient diphenhydramine or chlorpheniramine or doxylamine, what is the most important point you need to remind the patient about it? That means the first, so here let's look at the another analog, that is example here is anticholinergic drug. And this anticholinergic drug, more common tested question about the anticholinergic drug or about the unique structure of the anticholinergic drug. For example, these anticholinergic drugs have two special rings combined into one ring. That is a pyrrolidine ring and then piperidine ring. So this two ring forms one unique ring. So that's the unique for this anticholinergic drug. So this is a huge exam tip. So what that means is this unique structure applies to almost all anticholinergic drugs, and those anticholinergic properties of those dry mouth and dry conditions are often associated with those anticholinergic drugs. So within the anticholinergic drugs, so here is the question and combine. That's a keyword for this is what is the ring name? So you can submit those ring name here. Pyrrolidine and piperidine combined form the ring. So you can submit your answer into the description. Here is the answer for those combined ring, and that is called quasi ring. So quasi ring is the name of those combination of those two rings. Well, this anticholinergics, again, based on their quasi ring on the nitrogen here, that's here is a nitrogen and here is a nitrogen, and those nitrogens make small differences. So if it is a tertiary amine type of anticholinergic drugs, there are tertiary amine types are atropine, benzotropine, and scopolamine. So atropine is a prototype of all anticholinergic drugs. It is known to have a very unique structure that it has a tertiary amine. So what that means is since it has a tertiary amine, again it becomes a non-selective. It can cross the blood-brain barrier and can also produce the therapeutic effects on central nervous system. And for that reason, atropine is also used as an antidote for cholinergic drugs overdoses. Like organophosphates, antidote is atropine. So that way you can connect to those tertiary nature. Whereas there are several anticholinergic drugs, they are quaternary amines. Obviously, the big one is easy to remember is ipratropium, tiotropium, like generally they are used for COPD, and those medications have less effect on the CNS because they are quaternary amines and they do not cross the blood-brain barrier, so therefore they do not produce those CNS effects. So this is mainly how you use your analog structures to interpret some of their clinical effects and also some of the clinical side effects. So next, let's look at the another analog that always comes up in the exam is about the adrenergic agonist. So the adrenergic agonist, or again, there are several drugs in this category, in this similar category. The core structure of the adrenergic agonist is made of a simple a phenyl ethanol amines. They are called phenyl ethanol amines. And within adrenergic agonists, there are several drugs in that one. Therefore, this is a very important core analog to remember them. And and also highly tested point in the exam is from the catecholamines. Catecholamines, like what make them catecholamines? On this benzene ring, when you have two hydroxyl groups here, they're next to each other, and that's what it makes them catecholamine structures. And those catecholamine structures are present in norepinephrine, epinephrine, which is basically neurotransmitters of sympathetic system. Plus also those chemicals are used as medications in emergencies. So therefore, that's always comes up in the exam in various ways. So here is a exam tip. What are the examples of phenyl ethanol amine type of catecholamines? So just asking for example of those products that are called containing phenyl ethanol amine and catecholamine. So again, you can submit your answer on the description below, and you can wait for your response to compare your response. So here is your answer for those phenyl ethanol amine of catecholamines. Are the best examples are norepinephrine and epinephrine. So here on the side notes, I like to give you some additional information. So basically the catecholamines, I said the best examples are norepinephrine and epinephrine. So norepinephrine transforms to or forms the epinephrine. So they sound very similar, right? They sound like names. The only difference is the nor. That means nor means no, right? No methyl group here. Whereas epinephrine has a methyl group on it. So whereas no methyl, and here you have a methyl. That means just a difference here is just one methyl group. So how does this transformation happens from no methyl to methyl? By the enzyme called phenylethanolamine. It sounds like it's the same enzyme, chemical name. Phenylethanolamine and methyl transferase. That means you're just adding one methyl transferring onto the nitrogen of norepinephrine. So that makes the epinephrine. So however, this way you can also use the analogs to learn more about their metabolic changes, and also what kind of effects forms due to those changes also can be learned by using analogs. So here is the next another analog, that is adrenergic antagonists. The best examples of the adrenergic antagonists are the beta blockers. Well, just on little side note here, just beta blockers, all beta blockers end with the olol, O-L-O-L, right? That sounds like a L-O-L or olol. So except there are small exceptions, but otherwise most drugs have olol at the suffix of their name. So that's easy to remember them, olols. Well, then on top of that, structural analogs. What is that make them something important for the structure analog is most beta blockers have a specific group in it that is called aryl propanol amines. Aryl propanol amine. So this aryl propanol amine is part of those structure of the beta blockers. So here is always comes up in the exam is here the question is beta blockers are derivatives of what? So guess and submit your answer onto the description below, and here is your answer. Now you can compare your answer Beta blockers are derivatives of aryl propanolamine. Just now we were discussing about that. Alright, so here on the little side note, there are, on top of that, there are also exam keywords that you have to always remember, because sometimes questions can be given as a case scenario. So in that case, you just have to relate to their analogs and see how you can answer them by relating to their analog. You will see a big improvement in your answering ability in the exams. Especially board exams can trick you by giving some very long case scenarios. So here, there is a little side tip. I like to give you some information just to give you more confidence on those chemical or medicinal chemistry. So here are those, for example, propranolol, which is a non-selective beta blocker. That means also acts on beta 1 and beta 2 receptors, whereas atenolol, which is a cardioselective beta blocker, which mainly act on beta 1 receptors only. So here is the propranolol, which is non-selective, which is considered as more lipophilic. Philic means loving. So philic means loving, lipid loving means these are more lipid soluble. So what that means when it is a more lipid soluble means it can cross the blood-brain barrier and it can be causing more CNS effect or nervous system effect. Whereas here atenolol is called again hydrophilic. I said philic means loving. This loves water. Hydrophilic. Hydro is a water and philic is loving. Hydrophilic. So what it means is basically these are more water soluble. That means they have a less likely can get into the brain and can cause CNS. So especially there is a huge exam tip here is lipophilic beta blockers. Like they can has both effect, can have a side effects and also can cause therapeutic effect. So let's talk about this side effect, because since like propranolol, which is a lipophilic and can cross the brain barrier, so it can cause depression or it can cause fatigue, feeling tired, and also can make difficulty in sleeping or sleep disorder, insomnia, or can make delirium and other more CNS side effects. However, this can be also beneficial because it can go into the brain. Like propranolol can be used as a migraine prophylaxis, and propranolol can also use for tremors, Parkinson-related tremors, and also it is used for anxiety disorder. That means often you hear that there is something called stage fear. That is for exactly anxiety. So propranolol is also used for stage fear. That means that's a type of anxiety. And also restlessness, which is also another name, that is called ectasia. So this is what exactly the beta blocker and lipophilic beta blocker. That means by looking at their analog structures, you can exactly interpret several information that can be potentially expected in the exams. And board exams can trick you by giving a case scenarios. So therefore, relating those cases to their basic interpretation of their analog can be very effective way to learn more. Which is for antipsychotics. Antipsychotics have several antipsychotic, but I picked here one just to give you how well these analogs can be helpful to understand. So I picked up here the one that is end with the zapines. Zapine, clozapine, olanzapine, and quetiapine. They are very interesting one and very popular. That is also called second generation antipsychotic drugs. So in this second generation antipsychotic drugs, that is a ring, the lung ring that is highlighted here, that is called diazepine ring. And that is something huge exam tip, diazepine. So let's see what exactly question is asking here. Common ring between the benzodiazepine, that sounds like a diazepine, that sounds like a diazepine, they sound same, and antipsychotic drug clozapine. See, there are so many pins here. Zapines. So let's guess your answer, and obviously you can submit your answer onto the description below. And next, I'll take you to the answer here. So there you go, you got it. Diazepine ring. So that sounds like it. The ring, the common ring between them is diazepine ring. Here, you see this is the clozapine ring, which has a 7-member ring with 2 nitrogens here, and even here is a 7-member ring with the 2 nitrogen. They do have a diazepine rings. So although they are not exactly the same, but they are diazepine rings. So this is something you relate to their analog, and that's the way you memorize that. So next we will also have a benzodiazepine. They will discuss more about the diazepines. So here I like to go for next another interesting analog, which is a very important class of drug, that is the anti-epileptics that is used for seizures and epilepsies. So it is a highly tested point here is what kind of ring is present in very popular drugs that is called carbamazepine, azepine, oxcarbazepine, azepine again. See, all those have an azepine. That means the ring here is azepine ring, right? So question here is the exam tip for the tip. There's a test tip for the exam is what is the name of the ring in carbamazepine? So guess what is the name? Sounds like you can find an answer right into the drug name itself, and then you can submit your answer. Here is the answer for the ring, that is azepine ring. Remember, this sounds like a very similar to diazepine ring, but this is not the diazepine ring. It is just azepine. What makes the difference between diazepine and this one? You will see there is only one nitrogen here. Here there's a one nitrogen. There is no second nitrogen on this one. So that's what exactly makes one nitrogen means there is no di. Di for 2 nitrogen before, and here is just azepine. That's the way you can just easily memorize these analogs. I know initially it can be scary. Some students feel like terrible to do the medicinal chemistry questions, but if you just started focusing on these exam tips which is presented here, I'm sure you will see big improvement in your answering skills in the actual exam. So let's go on to the next analog that are something benzodiazepines. I was mentioning before here, I just like to give you a quick tip that PAM and LAM, basically all suffixes of the benzodiazepines are PAM and LAM. PAM and LAMs. Benzodiazepines are PAMs and LAMs. So what is the exam tip, or let's say a test tip for the exam is what are the keywords? What is the name of the ring B? So just you have to focus on the keyword here. What is the ring B? Although there are ring A and B and C, you need not to memorize all those rings. Just have to keep focus on the ring B. I'm sure you can answer that very easily because the answer of that question here itself is presented within the name of the benzodiazepine itself. So let's guess, and now you can answer your answer on the below description and then compare your answer here. So here the ring B is called diazepine ring. See, I said before, the name itself tells you what is exactly diazepine is. Diazepine is coming from diazepine ring, and there are 2 benzenes, so that benzene is attached to it, so therefore called benzodiazepine. Alright, so this is how analogs are helpful to understand. So there are another ways analogs also can give you some more better understanding on how do you answer questions which are often comes in the exam. So there are some keywords that are called exam keywords that you have to always keep in mind. Like for example, like GABA. GABA is a gamma amino butyric acid, right? Which is given this structure here. That's a GABA. So therefore, there are medications, they're named right after the GABA because they do have these kind of structures in them. They are called GABA analogs, right? GABA analogs. So as I said before, analogs. So what is that exactly? There are at least three drugs mentioned here that you have to know. They're GABA analogs: gabapentin, pregabalin, and vigabatrin. So here, the exam or test keyword is like asking here GABA analogs such as gabapentin, pregabalin, and vigabatrin, and all have a common in what? What they have is something common in them, right? So pretty easy answer. I'm sure you can think there is something common in their names. So what is the common in their names? Let's see here. All GABA analogs, GABA name in it. That means there is a GABA in the names. So here you can look at, for example, gabapentin, right? That means there is a GABA group here. This is the GABA group. And there is a vigabatrin. So vigabatrin, GABA again. And then pregabalin, GABA again here. So this is a GABA. So they are pretty related to each other. That's the easy way you can relate their structural relations or structure activity relationship, I could say, and compare them and then find easy way to memorize them. So here I like to go to the next, another important analog. I'm just giving you a few examples, but there are a lot more examples are presented in pharmacy prep courses, or if you enroll in the course at the pharmacy prep, you'll find hundreds and thousands of analogs, and those are important for the exams, board exams. So remember, in the board exam, they can trick you by various ways. So for example, here, the keyword is, this is a dihydropyridine. CCB means calcium channel blockers, right? Dihydropyridine type of calcium channel blocker. So as the name tells you, the name of the class itself tells you that they do have a dihydropyridine ring inside, right? That means this is the dihydropyridine ring. So let's say what is the exam keyword here? What is the common ring in dihydropyridine type of calcium ion channel block? For example, another side tip here I like to say, how do you memorize all the examples of dihydropyridine type? Like dihydropyridine, like di for D and pyridine for P. So didipines, like amlodipine, right? Di and P. So felodipine, right? And nifedipine, nimodipine, like those are the name itself tells you how you relate to the dihydropyridine ring. So let's look at the this. What is the keyword for this question alert? And also here is the keyword is 1,4-dihydropyridine ring. So the spelling required here, pyridine. So dihydropyridine ring is present in this one. Here on the little bit side note, I like to mention that in dihydropyridines, they are like amlodipine, nifedipine, nimodipine, and also felodipine. All those dipines, they do undergo oxidation reaction by the enzyme called CYP3A4. Remember, always comes up in the exam that most common metabolizing enzyme is CYP3A4. That means any drug that has metabolized by CYP3A4 enzyme, they often have a drug interaction. That's a huge exam tip here, right? Always remember, high potential CYP3A4 enzyme metabolizing drug. That also includes dihydropyridine. That means amlodipine, nifedipine, and nimodipine, felodipine. All those dipine, they do metabolize by this enzyme. Therefore, they produce a product called inactive product that is called aromatic pyridine. Actually, it's a simple pyridine ring. So this pyridine ring is formed after this oxidation. Well, what is that important for exam or exam keyword here is CYP3A4. Remember, CYP3A4 is essential for their metabolism. That means all the CYP3A4 inhibitors and inducers, they can result into serious drug interaction. Something you can relate to that one. Alright, so let's look at the other possible analogs. So there are some several class of drugs have something common in them. The most popular among them is a most popular antibiotic, that is a beta-lactam antibiotics. Always comes up in the exam, beta-lactam antibiotic, because beta-lactam antibiotics are most commonly used antibiotics, and most of the time they are first line choice for most infections, especially a respiratory tract infection, skin infection, tissue infection, including also the other several infections. So that means there are huge exam tips here. So there are something common in the cell wall. The bacterial cell wall has this piece that is called acyl D-ala. So this piece is present in bacterial cell wall. Basically, all those beta-lactams. Beta-lactam is this four-member ring is called beta-lactam ring. You see all these four major class of beta-lactam antibiotics, like penicillins have a beta-lactam, cephalosporins have a beta-lactam, carbapenems have a beta-lactam, and also monobactam has a beta-lactam. So that means these four major class of drugs falls under this class called beta-lactam. So, and these beta-lactams are, once you open up this ring here, you could see they almost looks like very close to acyl D-ala and D-ala. Look like that's the reason why they perfectly fit into the bacterial cell wall, and they break that amino acid, which is the D-alanine and D-alanine. And so here is the a test tip for the exam is, what is common ring in penicillin and cephalosporin and carbapenem? I'm sure you have a good answer. Definitely you can answer that one and enter that into the description and find and compare it. And you will find your answer right here. So obviously the beta-lactam ring. So this is where once you focus on some specific analogs, and then you can definitely memorize several classes of drugs. So here let's go to the next, another interesting class of drug, that is the SGLT2 inhibitors. They are used for type 2 diabetes, right? They are very popular now. Now currently there are several drugs in this class. Here the easy way to memorize this one is their suffix. All of them end with the gliflozin. Gliflozin, it sounds like gliflozin. So what is something very special about this is they do have this glycosyl group. I know there are so many drugs have a glycosyl group, but what makes something very special for SGLT2 inhibitor is there is something called C-glycosyl. Like here they are directly attached to the carbon. Most of the time they are attached to the oxygen. They are called O-glycosyls. But O-glycosyls have no activity for diabetes. So therefore, this medication, initially they tested the O-glycosyl. There is one product, but that has no anti-diabetic activity. So therefore, later they modified it and they found C-glycosyl are effective, and suddenly they have become very popular medications for type 2 diabetes. Well, so question is, the exam keyword here is like, obviously, there is, what is an essential group for SGLT2 inhibitor activity? So guess what could be the essential group? That is obviously C-glycosyl. C-glycosyl is essential for, remember, not the O, right? Examiners in the board exam, they can trick you easily. They may put just both options, C-glycosyl, and also you will have an answer of the O-glycosyl and N-glycosyl. But your right answer would be definitely C-glycosyl. This is how most answers looks very close to each other. Remember, when you go to the board exam, the answers, at least you will have 2 or 3 answers, which sounds very, very similar. Finding the closest answer, obviously the right answer is very crucial to pass your board exam. So let's look at the next. Another method or another tip way how you can memorize uh, medicinal chemistry is by focusing on what are the active metabolites. Some drug active metabolites function like a drug itself, or sometimes they are better than the original drug. So here I picked up few examples, and that are always comes up in the exams. Or, for example, a well-known antiviral drug that is valacyclovir. Sorry, this is a valacyclovir. It is hidden here. All right, so valacyclovir. So this is the structure of the valacyclovir, and the valacyclovir has a group called valine to the amino acid, and valine metabolizes by esteroids, the enzyme called valine valacyclovir esterase. And these valacyclovir esterases mean they break down the ester and they make it to alcohol. So here it makes the acyclovir. Basically, valacyclovir is a prodrug, and then eventually active drug here is acyclovir. So let's see what is the test tip for the exam. That is our key term for this one is, here is the question alert. Valacyclovir is a prodrug of what? I'm sure you have answered, and here is the answer for that is obviously the valacyclovir is a prodrug of acyclovir, and that is also known as the L-valyl ester of acyclovir. Basically, chemical name is valine, right? This is a valyl. So once you attach to that one, it becomes valyl ester of acyclovir. This is a pretty popular drug, which is acyclovir, is a common drug for both of them. Acyclovir and valacyclovir are both of them are drugs for herpes viral infection. The biggest difference on the side note here, I like to mention a couple of things. The biggest difference is acyclovir have to be, it has a slow in absorption, whereas valacyclovir has a better absorption, which is also called bioavailability. So because of that, generally it is used BID, means 2 times to 3 times daily for most of the herpes infection, whereas this one have to be taken 5 times daily because of its slow absorption. It is the most often given 5 times. So therefore, that makes a big difference, and that can be a potential case scenario questions in the board exams. So always there is some catch. You have to always relate to them. So here is another important metabolite I like to present you. That is, for example, there are 2 popular drugs. One is venlafaxine, which is also called SNRI, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, right? They are very popular or first line choice of antidepressant. So venlafaxine, and then there is another drug also SNRI, both of them are SNRIs, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors called venlafaxine. So what is the difference? It's just a DES. What makes the DES difference? Just remember DES for D. Demethylation means just you knock off the methyl group. But what is this? Always comes up in the exam is, may not ask about the demethylation, but important significant is CYP enzyme, CYP2D6, right? CYP2D6 is another second most common drug metabolizing enzyme after CYP3A4. That means there are drugs or substrate of CYP2D6 and also drugs of those if patient is taking drugs that are CYP2D6 or CYP2D6 inhibitors or CYP2D6 inducers, you may ask question in the board exam like, what medication would you prefer to patient, right? If patient is already taking a medication that is a CYP2D6 inhibitor, so would you choose venlafaxine as the drug of choice for that patient, or would you choose desvenlafaxine as the drug of choice, right? So what would you choose? I would choose desvenlafaxine because desvenlafaxine does not require CYP2D6 enzyme for its metabolism. It does not require because already it is metabolized. Whereas if patient is already taking this one, this can be a good option. Not this one because this requires CYP2D6. That means this can result into drug interaction in the patient, whereas this medication will not have a drug interaction with CYP2D6. So that is a huge exam tip. So always remember, you can even answer by using this method, even case scenario question. So here the answer for this is, what is the metabolism type of reaction? So the demethylation. Demethylation is the chemical name. A reaction of this called demethylation. Alright, so next we do look at these. Some drugs are active isomers. In some, one isomer is active, other isomer may not be active, or there is racemic mixture can be active. So there are some interesting examples here. Let's look at some examples. First one is citalopram and escitalopram. That's interesting, right? Citalopram is antidepressant, obviously, which is also called SSRIs, and this is also SSRI. Both of them are first line choice for depression, major depression. Well, what exactly differentiate between them is just this one site here, right? This site. So this site and this carbon, also called racemic carbon or chiral carbon. I'm sure you have heard about chiral thing, right? Chiral carbon. So this carbon makes the racemic mixture. So that is called racemic. Means that has a R and S here. There are both of them are present in this mixture. Whereas citalopram is a racemate, whereas the S-citalopram, as the name tells, S for S isomer. Right? This is the pure S isomer of this mixture. So as a result of that, you have two important, very popular drugs. Obviously, because of this, S-citalopram has more potential, more potency, means a small 10 milligram of dose of escitalopram can be much more effective than citalopram. And the potency of the drug is much higher because of the S pure S enantiomer. So here is the test tip for the exam, or exam keyword is, they could ask you indirectly like S-citalopram is what? S-citalopram is the S enantiomer of citalopram. Perfect. So let's look at another example. So here is the another enantiomer, a very popular drug that is called omeprazole, right? There is a spelling here, omeprazole. That is proton pump inhibitor, right? PPIs. You often hear PPIs. PPIs are the drug of choice for peptic ulcers, ulcer disease. So now these proton pump inhibitors, there are two popular ones, omeprazole, and this omeprazole there's a sulfur group here, and this sulfur makes the enantiomers, and which is, there's another product called S-omeprazole. S-omeprazole is an S isomer of omeprazole. Both of them are available in the market. However, initially, when this S-omeprazole came in the market, manufacturer thought that S-omeprazole will have a less drug interaction, but later found that they also have a drug interaction. Sometimes some enantiomers, pure isomer, may have a less drug interaction than the original racemic mixture. Alright, so what is that exam tip here that you should remember? Like question can be, omeprazole is what? Omeprazole is a racemic. Remember, they're not asking what is S-omeprazole, they're asking omeprazole. Omeprazole is a racemic. So these are the three important ways. One is analogs, and then active metabolites, and then followed by that active isomers. So by using these three methods of analogs, and I'm confident that you can learn a lot more about all medicinal chemistry. Complete medicinal chemistry can be focused on that. And we do have more of these presentations and also flashcards and also cheat sheets in our pharmacy prep courses. And also, I strongly recommend to subscribe this channel to get more of this kind of case more kind of those exam tips, and those can be very huge helpful. And also give a thumbs up if you like this presentation, and we thank you for your time and have a great day.